In modern Western culture, Friday the 13th is commonly regarded as a day of bad luck and superstition. The fear of this day is known as paraskevadacatriophobia. The superstition combines the Western fear of the number 13, known as triskaidekaphobia, with the belief that Fridays are unlucky days. While there is no empirical evidence to support the notion that Friday the 13th is inherently unlucky, the belief persists and even influences behavior, such as avoiding travel or important decisions on this day. For many, Friday the 13th represents a day of caution and heightened awareness. Superstitious beliefs associated with the date may lead individuals to take extra precautions.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
This observance stems from a deep-rooted belief in the power of superstitions and their ability to shape our experiences. But where did this beef with the number 13 even come from? Why do so many truly fear this day, believing it is filled with bad luck? The number 13's unfavorable reputation can be traced back to various cultures and belief systems. But while I started researching why the number 13 was so big and so bad, I quickly noticed that the number 13 exhibits a form of duality in its interpretation across different contexts and cultures. While it's often associated with negative connotations like disasters and bad luck, especially in Western traditions, it also holds positive or neutral meanings in other cultures, religions, and historical settings. One of the most frequently cited historical events that people associate with the superstition surrounding the date is the arrest of the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, on Friday, October 13th, 1307. That's right, this will be the 713th anniversary if my poor math is correct. The Knights Templar were a medieval Christian military order founded around the year 1119. They became one of the most powerful and wealthy organizations in the Christian world, with their primary duty being to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. However, their influence and wealth eventually led to their downfall. On that fateful Friday, King Philip IV of France, in coordination with Pope Clement V, ordered the arrest of hundreds of Templars, including the Grand Master. The Templars were rounded up, imprisoned, and many were subsequently tortured to extract confessions of heresy, blasphemy, and other crimes. The event was shocking because the Templars were widely respected, and even considered untouchable due to their role as protectors of the Christian faith. The arrested Templars faced a series of trials that were heavily biased against them. Many confessed under torture to a variety of charges, which included denying Christ and secretly worshipping idols. These confessions, though likely coerced, led to the disbandment of the order by the Pope in 1312. The sudden and dramatic suppression of the Templars gave rise to various myths and legends. Over time, the date of their mass arrest, Friday the 13th, became associated with bad luck and misfortune. It has been said that before being burnt at the stake, the Grand Master of the Templars told the king and the Pope they would die that very year, and they did. Many believe the Grand Master successfully casted a curse that saturated their arrest day. It is important to note that Molay died on March 18, 1314, after years of torture, but the day of the arrest is what is believed to be the transformative day. In short, the downfall of the Knights Templar acted as a catalyst for change, affecting both religious and secular spheres. It led to a reevaluation of papal authority and accelerated the shift towards stronger, more centralized monarchies, while also influencing economic and social structures. I believe that the association of Friday the 13th with negativity began with events like the arrest of the Knights Templar. However, both the number 13 and the day Friday have individually been considered negative or unlucky in various cultures for a long time. In the realm of numerology, the number 12 is often considered to symbolize completeness and order, as evidenced by its frequent appearance in cycles like the 12 months of the year, the 12 zodiac signs, and the 12 hours on the clock. Following this quote-unquote perfect number, 13 is seen as irregular and symbolic of disorder and imbalance. Additionally, 13 is a prime number, which historically has been associated with unpredictability and mystery due to its indivisibility. But the number 13 does not have to be viewed solely as a disaster or bad luck. It does not have to represent disorder. In fact, its prime nature, which makes it indivisible by any number other than itself, and one I did pass 4th grade math, could also signify incorruptibility, individuality, and the refusal to conform, qualities that are often looked at as positive or empowering. Its position immediately after 12 can be interpreted as a step beyond completeness, venturing into new realms or territories that are unexplored. Culturally and mythologically, the number 13 has also been viewed with suspicion. In Norse mythology, Loki, the trickster god, was the 13th god in the pantheon and caused chaos that led to the murder of the beloved god Balder.
He got cooked. He got cooked.
But Loki is often seen as a complex figure rather than purely malevolent. While he is indeed the trickster god who causes anarchy, his actions also serve as catalysts for change and transformation within the Norse pantheon. Loki's disruptive influence often forces the gods into situations where they must adapt and grow in wisdom or strength. In this sense, the number 13, represented by Loki, the 13th god, can be seen as a symbol of necessary upheaval and transformation. Loki's role is not just to deceive, but also to challenge the status quo, revealing the flaws and shortcomings of the gods, and, by extension, the world itself. His actions often have dual outcomes. They create disorder, but also set the stage for renewal or improvement. For example, it is Loki's trickery that ultimately leads to the gods obtaining their most prized possessions, like Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. In Hinduism, the 13th day of the lunar cycle, known as त्रयोदशी, can have varying interpretations depending on the context in which it is observed. While it is true that some consider this day to be inauspicious, it is not universally seen as such across all Hindu traditions. The perception of the 13th day's auspiciousness or inauspiciousness can depend on a variety of factors, including the specific month in the Hindu lunar calendar, the deity being worshipped, and the rituals being performed. For instance, Pradosh Vrat, a fasting ritual dedicated to Lord Shiva, is observed on the 13th day of each lunar fortnight, and is considered highly auspicious or shubh. Devotees fast and offer prayers to Lord Shiva to seek his blessings and remove obstacles. The 13th day can be seen as a transitional phase in the lunar cycle, a point of tension between waning and waxing or vice versa. It embodies the cyclical nature of time in Hindu philosophy, where creation and destruction are part of the eternal cosmic dance. In the realm of tarot, a form of divination that uses a deck of 78 cards, the 13th card in the major arcana is known as the Death card. Contrary to popular belief, the Death card is generally not interpreted to signify physical death or bad luck when it appears in a reading. Instead, it is most commonly understood to symbolize transition, transformation, and change. The card suggests the end of a phase or aspect of life and the beginning of another, much like how death in the natural world makes way for new life. The imagery on the Death card often includes a skeletal figure, sometimes riding a horse, and other figures in various states of distress or acceptance, reinforcing themes of inevitability and change. The card serves as a reminder that change is a natural part of life and is necessary for growth and renewal. In many tarot traditions, the Death card can signify the need to let go of something that no longer serves you, to make way for something new. It can also represent the need to confront fears or attitudes about change, urging introspection and a reevaluation of one's current path. So while the Death card may initially evoke fear or concern, due to common misconceptions, a deeper understanding reveals its association with transformative change, a concept that can be both unsettling and liberating. The Mayan civilization, which flourished in parts of present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, had a complex understanding of mathematics and astronomy, which they incorporated into their calendar systems. One of their calendars, known as the Zocan, was a 260-day ceremonial calendar. This calendar was not used for measuring the solar year, but had significant religious and ceremonial importance. The Zocan calendar was made up of 20 different day signs and 13 numeric coefficients, creating a cycle where each day was represented by a combination of a day sign and a number from 1 to 13. After 260 days, the cycle would repeat. The number 13 was significant in this context, not only mathematically, but also symbolically, as it was associated with important celestial phenomena and deities. The 13-day cycles in the Zocan calendar, known as tricinas, each had their own traditional meanings and interpretations, often linked to specific gods or natural elements. These tricinas were integral to Mayan rituals, divination, and agricultural practices. The number 13 was not necessarily seen as unlucky in Mayan culture. Rather, it had multifaceted significance that could be both positive and negative depending on the context. The number 13 can have various meanings within Wiccan and broader pagan contexts as well. In some Wiccan traditions, a coven usually consists of 13 members, reflecting the number of full moons in a lunar year. This number is sometimes associated with the goddess, as the lunar calendar, which is often linked to goddess worship, has 13 months. In these contexts, the number 13 is not seen as unlucky or malevolent, but rather holds positive or neutral connotations. In Jewish tradition, the age of 13 is a significant milestone, marked by the bar mitzvah ceremony for boys. This rite of passage signifies not only coming of age, but also a transformation in the individual's moral and ethical responsibilities. Prior to this age, it is the parents who are considered responsible for the child's actions. After the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for girls, although that age can be around 12 or 13 for the girls, the individual is regarded as accountable for their own deeds in the eyes of Jewish law and tradition. In ancient Egyptian culture, the number 13 did not bear the negative connotations commonly associated with it in modern Western society. Instead, it was often linked with positive aspects of their religious and cosmological beliefs. For instance, the myth of Osiris, a central figure in Egyptian mythology, who was killed and dismembered into 14 pieces, with only 13 recovered, did not render the number 13 as unlucky. Rather, Osiris's subsequent role as the Lord of the Afterlife gave the number associations with renewal and regeneration. This concept of going beyond the complete cycle of 12 to reach a new beginning was a recurring theme in Egyptian numerology. While the ancient Egyptian calendar, primarily lunar-based, consisted of 12 months of 30 days each, plus an additional 5 epagonal days. The number 13 could symbolize the idea of renewal, aligning with their focus on the afterlife and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. In Christianity, the number 13 is frequently linked to Judas, the apostle who betrayed Jesus Christ. Judas is traditionally thought of to have been the 13th individual to sit at the table during the Last Supper, thereby associating the number with betrayal and negative outcomes. However, this interpretation is not universally negative or ominous. In some Christian perspectives, the number 13 can also be seen as representative of transformation and change. Judas's betrayal, while devastating, was a pivotal event that led to the crucifixion and subsequent resurrection of Jesus, a cornerstone in Christian belief. In this light, the number 13 can be a symbol of profound transformation, signifying the end of one phase and the beginning of another, much like the death card in tarot. The event that Judas set in motion led to what many Christians believe to be the ultimate act of redemption and renewal. The Last Supper itself is often seen as a moment of deep spiritual significance, a time of communion and reflection. The gathering of the 13 individuals at this meal could be viewed as a momentous occasion that changed the course of history, rather than merely a cursed event. Are you sensing a pattern yet? I was completely blown away when I started connecting the dots, or at least my interpretation of the dots. Fridays were a bit more challenging to find the negative roots for, but it all seemed to go back to Christianity. Friday is considered unlucky because it is believed to be the day Jesus was crucified, and it's believed that the day Eve offered an apple to Adam was a Friday, so not the best of events in the Christian world. While not directly related to Friday the 13th, there is also a long-standing maritime superstition that setting sail on a Friday is bad luck. This could have contributed to the general notion of Fridays being unlucky. I also saw vague references to folklore and how Fridays seem to be a bad day for crops or something of that nature. In the late 14th century, Geoffrey Chaucer released a collection of 24 stories titled Canterbury Tales. In it, Chaucer refers to Friday as an unlucky day, writing that it is a day of mischance, but there was no reference to the number 13. The 1907 novel Friday the 13th by Thomas W. Lawson tells the story of a stockbroker who exploits the superstition to create a Wall Street panic on Friday the 13th. Newspapers and other periodicals from the early 1900s also occasionally mention Friday the 13th as an unlucky day, often in a somewhat tongue-in-cheek manner. Going down the timeline, some 19th century texts make mention of either Fridays or 13s being unlucky, but rarely, if ever, were they mentioned together. I also learned about the 13 Club, which was fascinating. It was a social organization founded in the late 19th century, primarily in the United States, with the aim of debunking superstitions, specifically those surrounding the number of 13. The club would often meet on the 13th day of the month, and their gatherings would deliberately flout various superstitions to demonstrate that they were baseless. For example, 13 members would sit together at a dining table. They would walk under ladders and sometimes even spill salt without throwing a pinch over their shoulders. I could never. I always throw that salt over my right shoulder, always. And of course, all of those actions are traditionally considered to bring bad luck. The club attracted some notable members, including 5 U.S. presidents: Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, William McKinley, and Theodore Roosevelt. I know 2 of the 5 of those presidents, so obviously my education was fantastic. Anyways, the extent of their active participation is not entirely clear. The club was widely covered in the media, which helped to raise public awareness of the superstitions it sought to debunk. Interestingly, the 13 Club may have had the unintended consequence of further popularizing the superstitions it aimed to dispel. By drawing attention to these beliefs, the club inadvertently gave them more cultural prominence. This is an example of the Streisand effect, where an attempt to suppress or debunk information has the unintended consequence of publicizing it more widely. The 13 Club largely faded away in the early 20th century, but its existence is a fascinating chapter in the history of superstitions and social psychology. In the late 20th century, the superstition surrounding Friday the 13th became deeply ingrained in Western popular culture, largely due to the media and commercial influences. Of course, the release of the horror movie Friday the 13th in 1980 had a profound impact on the public's perception of the date. The film spawned numerous sequels, a television series, and a wide range of merchandise, embedding the idea of Friday the 13th as a day of horror and misfortune in popular consciousness. As the superstition gained cultural traction, media outlets began to give more attention to the phenomenon of Friday the 13th. Often featuring stories or special segments about the superstition, its origins, and its impact on behavior. The concept of Friday the 13th being an unlucky day had also become a common trope in books, television shows, and other forms of entertainment, further reinforcing its place in Western culture. Even businesses started to capitalize on the superstition, of course, offering special promotions, sales, or events themed around Friday the 13th. This commercial interest helped to further embed the superstition in popular culture. The late 20th century also saw an increase in academic interest in superstitions, including Friday the 13th. Studies were conducted to examine whether the day actually had higher rates of accidents or unfortunate events, although results have been inconclusive. With the advent of the internet towards the end of the 20th century, the superstition around Friday the 13th began to reach a global audience, transcending its Western origins to some extent. By the end of the 20th century, Friday the 13th had become a cultural phenomenon in the Western world. Its reputation as an unlucky and ominous day firmly established and now commercialized. And it was this time in the late 20th century that was pivotal in shaping the modern perception of the day. So how did we go from the number 13 being neutral at worst to being considered just downright unlucky? I know myths and legends are the obvious answer, but follow me here. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think we as a society made this transition because of the narrators. These bards, mythologists, folklorists, and just any type of storyteller were the ones who set the tone and very often shaped beliefs. Societies often develop shared beliefs about what is considered lucky or unlucky, and these beliefs can be self-reinforcing. For example, if a culture broadly accepts that the number 13 is unlucky, people in that culture may be more likely to attribute negative events occurring on the 13th to the unluckiness of the number, thereby reinforcing the belief. Social conformity is also parallel to this. If it's culturally normative to view the number 13 as unlucky, individuals are more likely to internalize this view, even if they don't have personal experiences that support it. Going a bit deeper into the psychology, humans are prone to all sorts of cognitive biases that can reinforce superstitions, like the confirmation bias, which leads people to pay more attention to events that confirm their pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring the ones that don't. If somebody already finds the number 13 unlucky or bad, they are far more likely to remember disastrous occasions that confirm that belief. And as I mentioned before, media has a profound influence, especially today, and plays a massive role in shaping perception. The number 13 being portrayed as ominous and bad and yada yada yada, and especially when it's reinforced over and over again in news, media, literature, even if it's just for fun, not serious at all, which the majority of the time it's not, that can have a lasting impact on the public on something as simple as how the number 13 is perceived. Friday the 13th boasts a rich and intricate history, making it easy to understand why it is often perceived as a harbinger of misfortune. On the surface, the number 13 carries a host of negative connotations, further amplified by cultural myths and characters that paint it as a symbol of chaos and dread. However, upon peeling back the layers of this enigmatic day, one finds that at its core lies a universal human apprehension: the fear of change. Transitions and new beginnings, while unsettling to many, are the very essence of life. The ending of one cycle can either invigorate or terrify, depending on one's perspective. Personally, I've always found change to be disconcerting. It makes me feel anxious and unsafe. Yet rather looking at Friday the 13th as a day to be feared, not that I ever have, I've always found that kind of silly, just a cool day to get a tattoo. Other than that, just another day. But now knowing the history and the symbolism behind the number 13, I'm going to look at this day as a chance to step outside of my comfort zone. We'll see. Perhaps this misunderstood day serves as a catalyst, encouraging us to take actions that we have hesitated to take. Ultimately, how anyone perceives Friday the 13th is a matter of personal perspective. There is no universally correct or incorrect way to engage with it. Whether you choose to celebrate or hibernate, avoiding black cats and mirrors and momentous decisions is entirely up to you.